This so reminds me. This so reminds me of my time up at Dartmouth. So there's always the first row is always empty. Nobody ever sits in the first row. The Shabbat morning, you have 10, 12 people, and nobody sits in the front row.
The only reason
And very few people sit in the second row. I've always been tempted, well, what I'll do is I'll just take out the first row. I'll just take the chairs out. I'm not trying to guilt anybody into coming up. I'm just trying to observation. I wasn't trying to get people to actually move up here. I was just trying to, by the way, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Or do I need a microphone?
No.
You sure?
We could all hear you without the microphone.
All right.
Neil, can you hear? Can you hear Terrell?
No.
Don't use me as a gauge.
Okay.
You couldn't do it, huh? You couldn't do the front row. That sounds like a good idea.
We're gonna. We're going to commence our service. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Shabbat Shalom, Theodora. On page 184, at the top of the page, let us join together. Each of us enters this sanctuary with a different need. Some hearts are full of peace and gratitude, overflowing with love and joy. They are eager to confront the day, to make the world a better place. They are recovering from illness or have escaped misfortune. We rejoice with them. Some hearts ache with sorrow. Disappointments weigh heavily on them. Families have been broken. Loved ones lie on a bed of pain. Death has taken a cherished loved one. May our presence and caring bring them comfort. Some hearts are embittered. Ideals are betrayed and mocked. Answers sought in vain. Life has lost its meaning and value. May the knowledge that we too are searching restore our hope and renew our faith. Who does not hunger for friendship, understanding, warmth, and love? Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Let us lend strength to one another and pray for the welfare of this community and for the world. We turn now to page 226, and we begin with the Shochen Ad, followed by the Hatzi Kaddish.
Excuse me, what page?
Page 226. Oh, excuse me, page 222, excuse me. And then we'll go to page 224. Shochen Ad Maharom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv v'ranenu tzadikim baronoi la'yisharim nava tehila b'fi yisharim tithalal uv'divrei tzadikim titbarach uv'ilshon chasidim titramam uv'keref kedoshim titkadash. We turn now to the Hatzi Kaddish, page 224.
Yehish me rabban varach,
ba'ar vitrum amit nasse, vita dar, vita lei, vita lav, shmei di kodesham, leila min kobichata, veshirata, tush bechata venekemata, damiran bi'Allah, veimeru. Amen.
Please rise for the Baruch Hu, page 226.
Baruch Hu et Adonai, Hamivorach. Baruch Adonai, Hamivorach, Le'olam. Amen.
You may be seated. And let us join in prayer, the prelude to the Shema, the creator of the heavenly lights, beginning with "You Are Praised." Page 229. You are praised who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light, and from nothing at all, we could perceive in a world that has turned old a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence, how much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea. You are praised who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives, the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. Please rise now for the Shema and the V'ahavta, beginning on page 232 and continuing through to page 234. You may be seated. we continue now the prelude to the Amidah, to the Tefillah, on page 241. Together. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We look back at the pages of written history and be amazed, and then we will laugh and sing. And the good that is in us, children in their cradles will have won. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all of the sufferings will gather there and become song, ringing out into every corner of the earth from end to end. And the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert, with all to that morning throng. The Micha Mocha, page 240. And please rise for the tefillah, for the prayer, the prelude to our silent devotions and meditations. We begin on page 242. Adonai Sifatai Tiftach. Being so in awe of God, we ask God to open up our mouths because we are in such awe we are unable to speak, so that we may tell and recognize your praise.
Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufira Gita Hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohe אתה אדוני מקיים החוק.
Page 248, the Kedusha, at the top of the page, Nekadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרון, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ, כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני מקמו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישפיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גדלך, ונצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושמך אלוהינו מפינו לא יבוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
And we're going to continue in silent meditation. If you want to follow along in the prayer book, 248 to page 260. You may be seated if you wish, or you may stand, whatever is your custom. If you wish to engage in the prayer book, of course, you may do so. But if you wish to do so in just your own words and your own silent meditations, you practiced meditation before, you may do it, of course, that way as well. We're going to continue now with the Oseh Shalom on page 260 at the bottom of the page.
Oseh Shalom, Bimroma,
Huya Oseh Shalom
Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'imeru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Bimroma, Huya Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'imeru, Amen.
And we're going to continue now with our Torah service. Now, beginning with Ki Mitzion, could I have a volunteer come up to open the ark and to take take the Torah out? Okay, Dave.
Closest, right?
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Please rise.
Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai Merushalayim. Baruch Shenentan Torah.
Page 366.
Baruch Shenentan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, Bekedushato.
We continue now on page 366 with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadu Adonai iti, Umrom Shemo Yata. Shmecha Adonai Hagidura v'Hagivura v'Hatiferet v'Hanekah v'Hahod Ki kol b'shamayim v'haaretz Ki kol b'shamayim v'haaretz Lecha Adonai Amalacha v'hanit na'aseh lekol erosh. From the mul Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu lehad kadsho. From the mul Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu lehad kadsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu ramenu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu ramenu.
You may be seated. Well, Shabbat Shalom to everyone. It's great to see all of you here this morning on this beautiful Shabbat in this beautiful, beautiful sanctuary. And particularly want to thank, I guess collectively I could call it the Men's Club, for really providing us with just a delicious breakfast to start to start a Shabbat morning. Could not be better. So I was going to select for the Torah reading this morning because the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. In fact, for our Torah discussion, I prepared a whole list of questions. But then I found myself thinking differently because of the Akedah that immediately follows. This is a very interesting parsha. It has all kinds of things that seem very, very disconnected, extremely disconnected. You start with Abraham and the messengers that come. He takes them in, he prepares a meal for them, he gives them lodging, and then they promise him that he and Sarah are going to have a child. And Sarah laughs, right? Sarah laughs, and she gets reprimanded by the angels. Why did you laugh? Well, the interesting thing is, of course, down the road, she does have a son, and she names him Yitzchak, which the root of Yitzchak, which is my Hebrew name, which is why I like to tell jokes, is Litzchok, or that's the infinitive, excuse me, Tzachak, which means he laughed. So Yitzchak is a kind of future, he will laugh. So my Hebrew name is Yitzchak, so I do like to laugh, and so I tell jokes, and sometimes they're terrible, but I always
I
like
have to screen them.
Yeah, that's a screen one. She screens all my jokes. So we have that story, right? But then the story goes into Sodom and Gomorrah, which seems completely disconnected to the beginning part. Seems completely disconnected. What does the problem of Sodom and Gomorrah have to do with Abraham? And I was reflecting on that. In fact, the tradition reflects on that too. And one of the things that was about Sodom and Gomorrah was that they did not welcome strangers into their community. There were laws against that, according to Jewish tradition. So you think about Abraham, what he did, singularly, in welcoming these three strangers into his home and prepared a feast for them, and let them stay in his tent, lodging. And now we go to Sodom and Gomorrah, and there is a connection. The other connection is, of course, afterwards, and in traditional synagogues, we read this portion on Rosh Hashanah, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we read about the birth of Isaac. And immediately, which is kind of a blessing, right? A good birth. And that's where circumcision, by the way, comes from. He circumcised Isaac on the 8th day of his birth. That's why we circumcise. It's the only there's a commandment, but that's the reason why we circumcise on the 8th day. It's not because the 8th day is so special. It just says it, and that's why we do it on the 8th day. And we always count the day of the birth as day 1. So we don't go to the next day as day 1, the full day. So if you're born on a Monday, then you circumcise on the following Monday. That makes sense. Okay, so what does that have to do with the parsha that we began with? And what does it have to do with Sodom and Gomorrah? What's the connection there? Well, one could argue that family in Sodom and Gomorrah was not highly valued, and also that portion ends with the death of Lot's wife, who looks back and she turns into a pillar of salt. But then we have the birth of Isaac, and we have the troubles, the service that they have in the family, because Abraham with Sarah's blessing, he's had relations with Hagar, gives birth to Ishmael, and Ishmael and Isaac don't get along, and Sarah believes that she can't raise Isaac in the emerging Judaism, and so she tells Abraham to kick Hagar and to kick Ishmael out of the house, and we sort of know that story. There's an interlude in between there, and then we come to the Akedah, which everybody knows is one of the most troublesome passages in all of the Bible, right? God tells Abraham to go take his only son, take Isaac, the one that's just been born, though at the time of the Akedah, according to tradition, Isaac is 37 years old. So it's not like he's a little kid anymore, according to Jewish tradition. And he goes up and he has this encounter with God. And I was going to have a discussion on Sodom and Gomorrah. But in the framework that we're going to talk about, why is this story there? Why is there a reasoning? Is there a reason that we can find? Something about the character of the Jewish people that places that Akedah where it is in relation to everything else that we've read, Sodom and Gomorrah, where, by the way, everybody makes a big deal. Abraham speaks up to God and says, save the wicked because there's righteous living there. People misinterpret the argument. They say, oh, well, what Abraham was arguing was spare the righteous. But that way, if you read the Hebrew and you read the translation closely, that's not his argument. His argument is spare the wicked because there's righteous people living in the community. He doesn't want to see anybody destroyed. And that's a little bit of a hint, not much, a little bit of a hint of what I think is the reason, or what for me could be a reason, why the Akedah occupies a special place in this narrative at this particular point in time. It has to do with the character of being Jewish. So we're going to read a few verses from the Akedah, and then we'll put the Torah back, and then we'll have a short discussion on it. Okay? And then we'll conclude our studies. Okay. It's becoming a tradition where we call people up in groups to the Torah, so that everybody gets an aliyah, and that's what we're going to do. So let's start with these three and
this one.
I'm afraid of getting it wrong, but I think this is.
Oh, you were getting so good this morning.
David, see, I'm 20% certain now. I'm up to 20%. When I first came here, I was at 0%, and now, after a year and a half, I'm at 20% certainty. Okay. It's chapter 22 of Genesis, and that can be found on page 146 if you want to follow along. Okay. Who would like to lead the passage? Yeah, come close. The Torah does not bite, I promise. There's a nail here that you can scratch yourself, but the Torah doesn't bite. Go ahead.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher baraka banu mikol ha'amim v'nasan lanu es Torah. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ela beha Elohim nisa et Avraham vayomer elav Avraham vayomer hineni vayomer kachna et bincha et yitcha asher hata et Yitzchak v'lech lecha el eretz hamorim ועלהו שם לעולה אחת הערים אשר אומר אליך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nasan lanu Torah emes v'chayei olam nasan b'sokenu. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
I love that Ashkenazic
I know.
pronunciation.
Old
That's from the old days.
old habit style.
Remember the old neighborhood.
You were still better than mine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Molly, Heidi, Cam, and James. Oh yes, and Theodora, to practice.
Most important member of the group.
That's right.
Yes,
Last one to see God.
Start now, it's real hard, I'm just gonna let you know.
forgetting more Torah reading. I know this portion, I can read it for you.
Baruch Adonai Hamburach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vayed.
Baruch Adonai Hamburach Le'olam Vayed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bahar banu min kol ha'alim. Ve'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Vayashkem Avraham baboker, vayachavosh et chamorah, vayekach et shnei ne'arav ito, v'et Yitzchak beno, vayevaka atzei olah, vayakom vayelech el hamakom asher amar lo Elohim, bayom hashlishi. Vayisa Avraham et einav, vayar et hamakom merachok, vayomer Avraham el ne'arav, shevu lachem po im achamor, ve'ani v'hana'ar, nelecha adcho, v'nishtachave v'nashuva alechem.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah temet, v'chayei olam l'tah b'tuchenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
If only I was 35 again.
Well, this is the story of Abraham, you know. Sarah was what?
Yeah, we want to get her used to coming to the Hebrew school. So.
Start early.
Last group.
Where do you leave off? Pay attention. 6.
Yep. Amen. Vayekach Avraham et atzei ha'olah, vayasem al Yitzchak beno, vayekach biyado et ha'esh v'et ha'machelet, vayeluchu shnehem yachdav, vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham avi, vayomer avi, vayomer hineni vini, vayomer hine ha'esh v'ha'etzim v'ha'yehasa le'olah, vayomer Avraham Elohim Yalo Haseh Le'olah B'ni Vayeluchu Shnehem Yachdav.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emes, v'chayei olam naftal b'tefenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Yeah, hallelujah, Shem Adonai, King is God, Shem Adonai.
Please rise.
Adon ha'eretz v'shamayim, va'yirem keren amo, tehillah lechol chasyav, v'bnei Yisrael am kerobo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. It's Chaim hi lemata zekima, v'tom keharecha meushar derach darkenom v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chodesh, Chodesh Yameinu, Chodesh Yameinu, Kekedem.
Yeah, you may be seated. First, I'll throw it open to you. Any reasons, if you come up with any ideas about what this story says about the character of Abraham, or why this story is placed here in the text? What does the binding of Isaac story want? Where God tells Abraham to take his only son, his most beloved son, up to a mountain and slaughter him there to be an olah, to be an offering to God. There's been a philosophical treatise by Kierkegaard on that subject, which is, if you truly believe in God, and God tells you to do something that is even heinous, do you do that? That's the philosophical or theological question that Kierkegaard tries to answer during the medieval period. So it's been a subject throughout generations. It's been one of the most widely read and one of the most widely discussed stories in the entire Bible, including the New Testament. It stands out as significant. So significant that we read it on Rosh Hashanah. We read it on the New Year. So why do you think this story is here? And what does it say about the character, since Abraham is the first Jew? What does it say about Jewish character?
So Rabbi, I'm not sure if this is what you're
I don't have an agenda.
Okay.
No wrong answer.
One of the things I read previously was that from a historical context, child sacrifice was very common in the world at this time. This is like the first documented instance of a religion saying, no, we're not going to sacrifice a human, we're going to find something else in its place and showing the value of human life.
Certainly, you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, and that destruction juxtaposed against this, and it does make some sense. I'm just amplifying what you said. And to illustrate that point about ancient sacrifice, what came to my mind was, how many of you are familiar or have heard of the Rite of Spring? Rite of Spring is a music. It's actually a ballet that was the music was composed by Igor Stravinsky, and it revolutionized modern music. In fact, it revolutionized modern music so much that when it was first performed, from what I understand, there was a riot. It was performed in Paris, and the sounds were so awful and so dissonant and so, it was bombastic that people got upset and they threw chairs at the stage. Is that,
I've heard that, yes.
I've heard that, yes. I don't know if that's myth or if that's real. But what's the, you know what the ballet is about? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're the music.
Honestly, as soon as you put me on the spot,
Yeah. Well, the story is about a primal tribe, and they have a ritual every spring to sacrifice to, I guess, the god of spring. And they have to choose someone to dance herself to death as as the rite, R-I-T-E, the rite of spring. So there is in our, somewhere in our archetypical memory, to quote Young, something about sacrificing human life in the name of God, or in the name of a god, so to speak. That was performed in 1912, I believe. So there is, and I'm amplifying a little bit what you're saying, is that there was sacrifice and child sacrifice in very ancient, very primitive tribes. So that's, and this is a response to that, because Abraham just gets to that point where he's about to lower the knife, and Malach Adonai, a messenger of God, says, don't do that. Now I know how devoted, how committed you are. Yeah. Other thoughts?
What bothers me, and I don't know what bothers me a little bit, but here's a man who's totally devoted to God. Why is he totally devoted to God? There was no God before. I mean, he just left from idols and this is the Bible now, right?
Right.
God spoke to him, told him to believe. And so the faith he's got based on almost nothing but somebody whispering in his ear. I find that kind of extraordinary. It isn't like you and I and all here have learned and we've brought up and we're cultivated. He just has this devotion basically out of nowhere. And it's the opposite from Sodom and Gomorrah, which is exactly the opposite. There is no devotion whatsoever to anything except themselves and debauchery and everything else.
Yeah. That's a true insight. I hadn't thought of that, but that obvious, that Abraham is different. And the Torah is juxtaposing a life of just concerned only about the community, quote, welfare, in Sodom and Gomorrah, in quotation marks, versus Abraham, who has a deeper sense about the human condition and about relationship to something beyond this world. Yeah. David.
As you were speaking, it occurred to me that the whispering entity is all powerful. There didn't need to be a logical precedent for Abraham to be influenced by God. That's what faith is in a way, and he suddenly is imbued with faith, and it's not about logic at that point. He's on the path.
Yeah. And that faith can be stretched to illogic, so to speak, or inhumane.
But it doesn't have to be rooted in logic.
Yeah. Well, faith isn't, really.
That's what I'm saying.
Faith isn't rooted in logic. It's part of us, I think.
Yeah,
I think we do a lot to deny that in our society because it's not real, it's not tangible. I'm not talking about materialism, I'm just saying it's not tangible. And so faith has an irrationality to it, which is a problem, as my teacher would say. He would say, well, that's a problem. And it is. It's, we like to blame our society. Well, the synagogue is empty because, people don't come to synagogue anymore because we're all secular and all this kind of stuff. And there's truth to that. I don't want to minimize that. But there's also, if you come to the synagogue, if you come to temple on a Friday night, or you come this morning, there is an element of irrationality to it. Regardless of how deep you believe, you are sitting here saying words about God. There's a something beyond cause and effect, something beyond just what we're here on this earth for. Right, so that's probably the most difficult thing for people to overcome, is the irrationality. I don't mean that in a negative way. The irrationality of faith, of religion. The leap of faith, there's a lot of truth in that little comment about the leap that one has to take to be a, quote, believer. I don't want to use that in an evangelical sense, but to have a sense that there's something beyond just here. And something that guides us in some way, a spirit or something like that, something we call God. Right? There's an irrationality to it. The funny thing about all of that, by the way, is, having studied the mental health field, spirituality, exercising the spiritual aspect of yourself, be it Zen, be it yoga, being part of a church community or being part of a temple community, that's actually very good for they're finding that that's actually quite good for your mental health. And so the irrationality sort of turns into a rationality. I've thought about writing, this is good for your mental health. Come to temple, and you don't need to go see a doctor. So, but I haven't written that. I haven't written that bulletin message yet. Maybe one day.
But religion is a learned phenomenon.
It's a what?
It's a learned phenomenon.
Yes.
Even speaking in tongues is a learned phenomenon. Nobody just comes up and speaks in tongues. It's a learned phenomenon.
Yeah.
And my point was, you're right. I mean, I understand that there's no logic, but what bothered me is where do you learn this? I mean, it's faith and it's the Bible's written, and I understand that whole business, but for an individual to just out of nowhere,
No, that's why the Torah said, that's what it
to
can
have that faith, I mean, that's why he stands out.
Yeah.
Through all of this, he has just unbelievable faith.
One of the questions that always comes up to me is that Abraham's told he's going to be the father of a multitude of people. How many, you can't even number them. And he only has one son, and he's about to slaughter him. So where does he think the rest of the multitude's going to come from?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was even on the line when he went up. He had absolute faith.
My idea of this whole story goes back even further, and you have to look at it when Abraham discovered that there was only one true God, and God told him to leave Ur and travel west till he got to what is be called the Promised Land, the Holy Land, Israel, whatever you want to call it today. And God blesses him. He fulfills all the dreams that he told Abraham he would do, including having Isaac born so late in life, and the multitude concluded Ishmael. That's the answer to one question. But God wanted to know how much Abraham really believed in him. And this is where he instructs Abraham, okay, I want you to take him up and just, bind him, and, I want you to slaughter him in my view, until God stops him. And from what I've been told and learned here, after that moment, God never spoke to him. It was always through the angels. So while God appreciated that he really did believe in God, it was to the point that life is still sacred.
But there is some people that believe that Isaac he wasn't just 10 years old or 5 or what, he was 35. That as the two of them knew what was going on.
Right.
I mean, Isaac wasn't
Yeah, and the tradition, when I say tradition, I mean the commentators make that point when there's a phrase in the actual narrative that says, the two of them went together. The word yachad, meaning really they weren't as one mind. Both of them were in agreement to do this. Now, I want to make sure we get out, relatively an hour and 15 minutes. Let me tell you my little take, and I'll leave you with this one, because this is what came to me sort of last night. And I compare it to the Alaskan salmon. The Jewish people are similar to the Alaskan salmon that swim upstream to spawn, right? They go up against the current, which really kind of makes no sense, and they're always going against the tide. Always, right? They're always going against the stream. And I think that one of the characteristics of our people, one of the characteristics going back to Abraham, is that we're always stretching the limits of things. We're always asking the question that nobody dares answer. And we come up with a different perspective as a result of that. I'm not saying that we're any better than anybody else, but I think that we test ourselves. We test humanity. We test the status quo all the time. And let's assume for a moment that the status quo wasn't the sacrifice in the name of God. But like you say, Abraham began to think about God not as corporeal, not as an idol, but as something that directs life in some way. Well, how much direction does that spirit take you? And are you willing to go to the extreme and murder, kill your own son in that name? And so he's pondering that, because on one level it makes sense. If you step into the world of faith, that makes sense. But he, in exploring that, takes a step back. God directs him, of course. But what's interesting to me is the question that's raised from the text, and that interaction. And that's part of the character, I think, of the Jewish people that makes us, in some ways, unique. I'm not saying that other people don't, but look at this community. I mean, think about it for a moment. In my education, I'm learning about the culture here. Oftentimes, people will tell me, this is the South, right? I hear that, right?
Me all the time.
All the time. This is the South. Whenever I want to bring something from the North here, this is the South. And there's a brilliance in that. Do I like hearing it? All the time. All the time. Constantly. But here's the but part. When there really wasn't a reason to keep Judaism alive, your parents, your ancestors could have easily abandoned and easily assimilated. I don't come from that. Much more, it's easier to retain Judaism up there in big cities and big communities. It's much easier, and I get that. And down here, it's swimming against the tide. No reference to the football team. It's okay, I can get away. Okay, I am referencing the football team midrashically, you're right, okay. But I think you get the point, that there's no rational reason for this place to exist for 178 years. It borders on irrationality. It'd be so much easier to give in to that over generations of time. Civil War, 2 world wars, today assimilation, football games on Friday night, all of that stuff, right? It'd be so easy to give into it, and yet you haven't. In some ways, you are like Abraham. In some ways, you still you're taking it to the limit, so to speak. You're in a world where there is absolutely no reason, no rational reason to maintain Judaism, except Mobile is better off, is much better off with the Jewish community than without one. I don't know if you believe that or not, but I believe it. The values, the questioning, the humanity, the prophetic tradition, the beauty of the service, the traditions that we keep alive, Mobile, whether they know it or not, is better off having a Jewish community, having a Jewish presence here, having a vibrant Jewish community here. And you've all done that. And your ancestors did it. And your ancestors' ancestors did it. Some of you go back, what, 5 generations, 6 generations, 7? You lose count after a while, right? All of a sudden the number becomes meaningless. But You carry that on, and in each and every way, you are like Abraham. Do you see that? I hope you do, because it is an insight into the nature and the beauty of this community. And if I thought otherwise, I wouldn't be here. That's why I came, actually, to try to learn that and to think about that. I'm always an outlier. I always do the weird thing. I've always done that. So, but you really have something special. You really do. You're testing God and testing the environment, and here we are 178 years later in a community that wants to grow, that wants to be vibrant against all the odds, against all very difficult odds. And everything you've been through, we're here this morning and we're praying and we're together as a community with a wonderful breakfast to begin and wonderful fellowship. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We're going to continue with the prayer for healing, page 371.
Please join with me.
We want now to say the names, either to yourself or out loud, of those in need of spiritual or physical or emotional healing.
Catherine McDonald and Jen.
David Grossman.
Judy Lovely and the Lovely family.
Carolyn Perry. Sandra Holberg. Please rise for the Alenu, page 586.
Alleinu lishabeha gadon hakol, la teit gedula lukse brishit, shelo asanu kegaye haratzot, velo samanu kamishmechot ha'adama, shelo samchekenu chahem, v'glor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim V'haya Adonai lemelech hakol haaretz, vayom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
You may be seated. Is there anyone observing a yahrzeit or saying Kaddish for someone who they wish to remember at this time?
My father, Jack, so
My father, Philip Layton.
The Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. Let us rise. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Meraba, Yalmad Yivrach Yudte, Yamlich Malchute, V'chayechon v'yomechon, Uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru Amen. V'hei shmei Rabba mevorach, Le'olam u'le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromah v'yitaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitala shemei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiram v'alma v'imru Amen. V'hei shlama nabamin shemaya V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. The God who established peace unto the heavens, grant peace and comfort in the hearts of all who mourn, and let us say, Amen. May be seated. A few announcements. Tomorrow will be a religious school, and that will be at 10:30, is that correct? Also, there may be, are they going to gather together before?
At 10 o'clock, they are supposed to get together and put packages together for the homeless. I guess there's items here that will be doing that, and then school starts at 10:30.
Thank you. And I urge everyone to try to attend the Veterans Day service that will be at the Jewish Cemetery. David, did you want to say anything about that?
No, we said it all.
I really urge everybody to come to that.
Is it at noon?
Yeah, that's
Friday
at
noon?
noon. Yeah.
I'll say,
Please.
it's at noon, and we're gonna hear two different stories on POWs.
Yeah. It's a very moving ceremony. I went last year when I first came, and it was just very powerful and an appropriate tribute to the veterans who have made the life that we have possible. And I can't think of actually a better place to do it. And every year it's organized by David, and he puts it all together, and it's really very, very well done. Thank you for that. Tuesday, we are hosting the Interfaith Thanksgiving service. That will be here, of course, and that will be at 6:30. There is a cost of admission. You have to bring either a turkey and or a bag of groceries or a cash donation, preferably a turkey. The turkeys will be taken immediately afterwards to the Central Presbyterian Food Pantry, and then the following week, before Thanksgiving, they will be distributed to those in need. So we hope that you'll come on Tuesday, as well as the congregation from the two churches. I want to thank Molly once again, and thank our breakfast crew for making such a wonderful start to this Shabbat. All right. This was a real occasion where I'm going to, got my guitar out here. Haven't played it in a while, I'm a little rusty, but there's so many good adonolams that go to guitar. So, let's do the Israeli adonolam, page 627. This is the only prayer that I really can't memorize. I always get those verses all mixed up. So that's why I always have to have them. Page 627.
625.
Oh, 625, excuse me, 625. We'll do the Israeli one. I have to perfect my technique. John Kaplan was brilliant at this. I always admired the way he could take the guitar, you always had the strap off, and then seamlessly he'd put it over his shoulder and fix that guitar. You think that's easy to do, it's not. He was smooth, wasn't he smooth?
There was a smoothness.
Okay.
There was an extra appendage, I think.
Shabbat shalom to everyone. Shabbat shalom.